Now we turn to Steve Ellner, author and professor of Latin American history, for the politics of this situation. Thanks for joining us, Professor.
Good to be on the program.
Okay, so in response to a call by the United Nations, a contact group of 14 nations met today in Uruguay to discuss a peaceful and democratic solution to the Venezuelan conflict. EU's Federica Mogherini called for free and transparent elections. And do we actually expect something positive to come out of this meeting?
I think there's a good possibility, Scottie, that you'll see the emergence and the consolidation of a middle position between the two extremes, the extremes of polarization, Maduro on the one hand, and those who are calling for an immediate regime change on the other. The fact of the matter is that the impression that a lot of people have that the mainstream media has promoted, that you have most of the entire world ganging up on Maduro, is really misleading, because the fact of the matter is that 75% of the countries in the world do not recognize the Guaido government. They continue to recognize the Maduro government. And this may explain why the UN Secretary General Guterres is also continuing to recognize the Maduro government, and in fact has indirectly criticized Guaido and the Trump administration when he says that humanitarian aid should not be politicized. So I think there's a good possibility that out of this meeting in Montevideo, you'll see the consolidation of a middle ground, which will promote dialogue and hopefully a peaceful solution.
Well, the Montevideo mechanism involves 4 steps, and this includes immediate direct dialogue between the parties, negotiations, commitments on both sides, and implementation accompanied by the international community. Do you think this dialogue amongst the opposition and the Maduro government can really exist? Is that realistic expectations of the two?
I think there is a good possibility that it will succeed. And I say that because, again, many people have the impression that politics in Venezuela is all about Maduro on the one hand and Guaido, who really represents a radical sector of the opposition, on the other. You know, the mainstream media doesn't touch the topic of the opposition. The opposition is very much divided. And like I say, Guaido's party, Voluntad Popular, represents a radical, sector of the opposition. But one of the spokespeople for the opposition, Enrique Capriles, stated that most of the parties of the opposition were not informed about Guaido's self-proclamation as president, and that those parties were actually opposed to that at first. So it seems to me that you have a segment of the opposition, perhaps a majority of the opposition, certainly a majority of the parties of the opposition, that are not completely going along. I mean, they've gotten on this bandwagon, but they have doubts. And the majority of people in Venezuela also have doubts because they, according to the polls, would like to see their priority is the resolution of the pressing economic problems facing Venezuela. They're not talking about regime change. They're talking about solving their immediate economic problems.
Well, that's the question. I think all of us have bleeding hearts. All of us want to take care of those that are hurting. But like you mentioned, the majority of the media seems to be not showing the full story of it. Why do you think, and this is on both sides of the aisle in the United States, why is the U.S. so set on a regime change down in Venezuela, in your opinion, from your observations?
Well, I think there is the misconception that just like you have pressing economic problems, and there's no question about it, the situation in Venezuela is very difficult, but that topic of the economic crisis in Venezuela gets conflated with the idea that Maduro is a dictator, that the Maduro government is authoritarian. And the fact of the matter is that it's much more complicated than that. Just to give you one example, Scottie, the elections that were held in October of 2017 were called for by the ANC, the Asamblea Constituyente, the Constituent Assembly. And all the parties of the opposition, even Vanguardia Popular of Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez, participated in those elections. Only Maria Corina Machado, who has a very small party, did not. But all the other parties did. Now,
what percentage did Maduro get from that?
The government won, the opposition won in 5 states, there are 23 states. So the opposition did win in several states.
Out of 23?
That's right.
Okay.
But big ones, and fairly important states. But in any case, what I'm trying to say, Scottie, is that these parties then stated that the elections for president held in 2017 were illegitimate because they were called for by the same ANC. So the situation is much more complicated.
It's much more complicated, and yet the United States in the last 3 weeks have gotten involved. Professor, thank you for giving us your insight into this.
Thank me for inviting me to the program.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.